How's it going? You guys good? Glad to be here? Merry New Year! Oh man, we're gonna have to up that a little bit as we go tonight. Hey, I'm so glad you're here. My name is Drake. I am the lead pastor here at City Church, and it's an honor to have you join us for the kickoff of the new year and the kickoff of this new series, He Would Love First. And so, I don't know if you're familiar with the old school, WWJD bracelets, like the What Would Jesus Do conversation. But for Christmas Eve, we handed out a bunch of these cool bracelets that have the letters H.W.L.F. And we believe the answer to the question, what would Jesus do, is that he would love first. And so we have these out in the lobby for you. If you didn't get one on Christmas Eve, they're on the Next Steps table. You can grab those on your way out as our gift to you. But man, just super pumped to have this conversation with you as we get into the new year. And I don't know about you, I get excited about this because of how simple it is. When we hear, oh, Jesus would love first, yeah, that sounds great. And I don't know where you walked in on your spiritual journey. Some of you are followers of Jesus. Some of you are spiritually interested. Some of you have no idea what you believe. Some of you are skeptical. Some of you grew up in it and ran away from it. And so we're all kind of coming together with some different preconceived ideas and experiences that really affect the way that we view this conversation. And so as we get into it, I don't know about you, but hopefully the idea of just Jesus loving well, if nothing else, if he was just a good dude who did some awesome stuff and loved well, that's enough to at least semi-motivate us. And so we get excited because it's simple. Now, I think there's some tension here because you and I both know people, and maybe not you, but I have been people who has misrepresented what Jesus came to do. You and I both know people who claim to follow Jesus who didn't love first. Does that make sense? And for me, frankly, I've definitely been there on the other side of that coin when I didn't love first. And so just because this conversation is simple, it doesn't mean it's easy. Are you with me on that? Have you ever been in the moment when, you have this great intention of being loving? You kind of put your best foot forward and you have every intention of responding the right way and saying the right thing and choosing love in the moment when it's in a relationship or with a friend or family member or coworker, and then you go in with the best intentions and then you end up saying something stupid anyway. Have you ever been there? Just me? Okay, great. Everybody, hey, way to go. All right, a little transparency in the new year. And so that's the problem, is just because it's simple, it doesn't mean it's easy. And so what I want to talk about today, especially in light of the new year, is that I believe this formula will help us. And if you're taking notes, I highly recommend you take some notes. This will be really helpful to you no matter where you walked in on your spiritual journey. The reason that there's a challenge and there's a gap between intention and what we actually see accomplished is because it's our direction, not our intentions, that leads to our destination. This make sense to you? It's our direction, not just good intentions, that allows us to get to our destination. Now, let me give you an example so this makes sense. Earlier this year, our family and our staff members, we went on a camping trip. And it was up in the Rockies, kind of out in the middle of nowhere. And it was one of those hey, turn right at the chunky squirrel, and then left at the big tree, those kinds of directions. And so I'd only been there one time. Someone took me out there to this super secret, awesome spot that I'm not going to tell you about because it's ours and you can't have it. And so we get out there, and I've only been one time. And so it's us in a caravan, me and two other cars. Danielle's in the car with me, all the other kids, and everybody's in the other cars. And got to have a little bit of a four-wheel drive to get out here because it's kind of off the map. And I kind of remember. So I had great intentions and a general direction of where we're going. Kind of got to Lyons, and I knew, kind of where we were supposed to go. Now, no one else knew, by the way, that I didn't know where I was going because I was the fearless leader. And so we're driving, and Danielle's in the car, and here's what I remember. Once we made a certain turn, we kind of ended up on this road, and at some point, you turn right at the mailboxes. You know what the problem with that direction was? There's a whole bunch of freaking mailboxes on that road, right? And I'm like, I wonder if it's that one. I wonder if and honestly, after a while, it's getting dark, and I'm like, dude, if it gets too dark, I don't know. There wasn't numbers on this mailbox, and so I'm looking for the mailbox. And a couple times, we pulled off at the mailboxes that I thought, and then it was always terrible roads, too. We were up on this huge incline, and we all got stuck on this one-lane road, and I had to, park, get out of my car, go walk over to the other cars and say, hey, we're close. We're really close. We're not there yet. And eventually, I found the right set of mailboxes, and I did get us there. But I had all the intention in the world, but I didn't have clear direction. Does this make sense to you? And so without clear direction, you and I will probably not get to our desired destination. And so in this new year, let me ask you some questions. Maybe you've been pondering this on your own. Maybe you haven't given it a second thought. Maybe the new year is jumping up, and you're like, oh, wow, it's 2020. And so I don't know where you walked in, but let me ask you some questions. Where are you headed? Who do you want to be as we go into this year? What areas do you want to grow in? What things do you want to see accomplished in and through your life? What memories do you want to create this year? What do you want to see change in your life personally, and what do you want to see change in the world around you? Just some like big, deep questions that we have the opportunity to do annually when we reevaluate, right? Now, you might be thinking about those things, and I can't give you the answers to those, okay? Like today's conversation is not going to answer all your 2020 questions. You're not going to walk away with exactly what you're supposed to be doing, nor did you show up asking for that. But here's what I believe. I believe that today, this conversation is going to give us some very clear direction that's going to positively influence every area of our lives. If we will head in this direction, no matter where our individual destinations are taking us, if we can head in this general direction, I believe it's going to influence positively every area of our life, whether you find yourself today as a follower of Jesus or not. And so I'm going to ask you a question. The first one's going to be participation. And because we have some people who are followers of Jesus and not, I'm going to kind of do a double-sided question, okay? So here's my question, and then in a minute I'm going to ask you to raise your hands. How many of you in the room desire to follow Jesus well? Or if you're like, I don't know if I'm ready to pull the follow Jesus card yet, how many of you simply desire to love well? So how many of you right now, raise your hand, you want to follow Jesus well or love well? All right, look around for a moment. Keep them up, keep them up, keep them up. That's everybody in the room, okay? No surprise there. Put them down, put them down. That's good intentions, okay? That's great intentions. Now, here's my second question. No need to answer, but I want you to think about it. So if you want to if you want to follow Jesus well, or you want to love well, which I believe those can be the same thing, then what does a Jesus follower look like? Or maybe a question if you're on the outside looking in of this Jesus conversation, what does it look like to love like Jesus? How would you answer that? Would you take a moment, kind of just run it through your brain? Like, what does a follower of Jesus look like? Now, the challenge with this question is the first one can represent intent, right? We all want to follow Jesus well or simply love well. The second question actually represents some direction. And depending on how we answer this question will determine where we go. And the reason this is so important is because, unfortunately, I believe some of us have been exposed to answers that miss the mark when it comes to what Jesus actually invites us into. You see, one of the big problems we run into, and one of the reasons that maybe some of you are skeptical about Christianity, or maybe you've never plugged in and committed to a church because of negative experience, or maybe it's one of the reasons that you walked away from faith, or that you are walking away from faith as we speak, is that you have heard a version of what it means to follow Jesus that is simply inaccurate. It might have pieces. Maybe it's missing things here or there. Maybe it has some additions. It goes both ways, by the way. I've seen them on both sides. And every time we add or subtract from what Jesus invites us into, it muddies the water, and we get frustrated, and it confuses us. And it actually leads us away from the path of loving well and following Jesus well. And so how did you answer that question? Just in your mind. What does it look like to follow Jesus? What does that mean? What does it look like? Let me give you a couple of answers that maybe some of you came up with, and I'm just going to be reading your mind, okay? I totally hacked into your email, and no, I'm not, that's weird. Okay, so just a couple of thoughts maybe that you came, just as you were thinking, is that we would measure someone as a Jesus follower by what they do. And you might have heard this, right? So some people come to the question of like, hey, what does it look like to follow Jesus? And we answer it by measuring like, hey, am I doing all the right things? And am I not doing the wrong things? And depending on where you come from, by the way, like the wrong list can change. Have you ever noticed that? Right? Some things are wrong in some contexts and not in others. And so we have this like, am I doing the right things? And am I not doing the wrong things? And we have this kind of standard of wherever it came from. Maybe someone else put it in front of us, or we made it up in our minds, or a little bit of both, or we got it from our family, or whatever it is. And we have this measure of what it means to follow Jesus. And unfortunately, can I just be honest with you? There are many churches in America that teach today that you can measure what it means to follow Jesus by what you do and don't do. And it's wrong. It's wrong. Jesus didn't give us any inclination that we measure our ability to have a relationship with him by a list of do's and don'ts. And so if this is your understanding, here's what happens. And if you've been exposed to this, you have friends that have been exposed to this, here's what happens, is we look at this list, and if you're like me, you set it in front of you, and it's maybe aspirational for a moment, but then you fail over and over again because you can't measure up to a consistent moral standard. And so then what happens? Then you get frustrated, and then you get irritated, and then you get discouraged, and then you feel like a failure. And friends, you know what that's called? It's called religion. And it's what a bunch of people were doing when Jesus showed up. And Jesus is the one that made all those people mad, okay? And so if this conversation can do anything, maybe I can just set you free from some of the blindness that religion causes, because Jesus doesn't invite us into a religion. We'll get to that in a minute. The second thing, maybe you think, okay, a follower of Jesus is measured by what he does or what she does. The second thing, maybe, that you've heard, or maybe your mind went to, is a follower of Jesus can be measured by what they know. And depending on what you've grown up in and around, I have some friends that kind of grew up like in the church, and so they went through some classes and they learned all the right answers. And if everyone can say all the right answers and answer all the right questions and have the consistent kind of basis of belief and cognitive reality, then like you get a gold sticker and say, hey, you're officially a follower of Jesus if you can answer these questions right. Now, the problem with that, and hear me on this, okay? I'm not saying that following Jesus has nothing to do with what we do and what we know. Okay, are you with me on that? I'm not saying that. I'm simply trying to show us the gaps and maybe some of the things we've been exposed to. And so information doesn't necessarily lead to the right direction. Does that make sense? Right? Like I had appropriate information. I knew where this camping ground was, and I knew I was supposed to turn right at a mailbox, right? But information alone didn't necessarily get me there because I didn't have all the pieces. Or maybe a better example, you probably know someone who knows, because it's been proven by science over and over again that smoking cigarettes can cause cancer. And in the face of that reality, we can still choose to smoke cigarettes or eating unhealthy. You apply it to whatever you want. Does this make sense? How often do we have right information, but it doesn't necessarily lead to right behavior? Are you with me? Okay? So what that means is someone can grow up in and around an idea of who God is and who Jesus is and have the right information, but it doesn't necessarily point us in the direction that we want to go that gets us to the destination that we desire. Now, if you're like me, we don't always give a ton of thought to our direction, and then we end up places we didn't mean to be at times. And so what I want to do is kind of get on the front end of this and just ask the question, hey, where do you want to go? Now, hear me. I'm not saying these things don't matter, but what I'm trying to show us is that information alone or behavior modification, following a list of rules alone, those two things, they fall terribly short of what Jesus invites us into. And so I want to invite us into the bigger conversation today. You ready? Yeah? Okay. 2 Corinthians chapter 11. This was a religious guy, by the way, super religious guy who met Jesus, was freed from all the religious do's and don'ts, becomes a follower of Jesus, and he starts planting churches and telling people about Jesus all over his modern world. And he writes to one of the church plants in the city of Corinth, and here's what he says to them, which I think is really, really helpful for us today. 2 Corinthians 11. Paul is writing as a new Christian, as an unreligious person, now a follower of Jesus, and he says, man, I fear, I'm worried for you, I'm concerned about you, that your minds have been corrupted from the simplicity that's in Christ, the simplicity of following Jesus. And so maybe for you, following Jesus has been presented as this complicated process of do's and don'ts and rights and wrongs and cognitive information to hit a certain standard to make God happy with you. But let me just share with you very briefly. Maybe you're new to City Church, and just so you know, we started just a couple of months ago, right before Easter, and man, this church was birthed for one reason and one reason only, and that was to help people find their way to God from where they are. Our whole mission, we exist, City Church exists, and if you're part of this family, you and I exist to help people find their way to God from where they are. Now, if that's the destination, then we should probably be able to answer this question. Are you with me? We should probably have this right. Like, What does that actually mean? Now, here's what that means for you and me. Wherever you are today, listen, if you're a follower of Jesus, if you're not a follower of Jesus, somewhere in between, our desire is to help you take one step closer in your relationship with God. No matter where you walked in today, we want to help you just take one step closer. And listen, if you've been a follower of Jesus for a while, we want to help you take one step closer. Because there's always one more step. You with me on this? So that's where we're headed. Now, here's where we're going. 3 boxes, okay? Now, if you go home today, find you a Bible. Actually, there's Bibles out in the lobby. You can grab one on the way out. And I would love, if you did this and put it on Instagram, I would love it. It'd be hilarious. But go home. The first 4 books of the New Testament are what we call the Gospels. It means the books of good news. And they're the historical eyewitness accounts of the life of Jesus. And there's 4 books by 4 authors, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. And if you take those 4 books and you took a pair of scissors and you cut out every story, and every story related to the life of Jesus, every story in all 4 of those books related to the life of Jesus fits in one of 3 boxes. And what I want to encourage and invite you in today is more than what we do and more than what we know, it's who we know that matters more than anything. And the life of Jesus, you can go, listen, read it for yourself. In our city groups, we've been walking through these books on our own. As you do it moving forward, just pay attention. Every story you read fits into one of 3 relationships that we see in the life of Jesus. The first one is Jesus and his relationship with the Father. Now you have to understand, Jesus called God Father because it was a relational term, and he used it on purpose to help us understand that he's not just this infinite being, creator, God thing out there that's kind of ready to smash us like bugs if we mess up. But he's a good dad who loves us and wants to be involved in our lives. So Jesus continually referred to God as Father. And we don't have the time to break it down all today, but Jesus was born, he was God, he was born of a virgin, and he lived a perfect life. And part of this whole Jesus thing is that he limited his divine attributes, meaning he kind of took the form of you and I to be like us, so he could live the life like you and I, to experience life like you and I experience, but without sin, without brokenness. Later, he would give his life in our place for our sin, die, raise again, proving that he was who he said he was and that he could do what he said he was going to do. But all that started when Jesus emptied himself, became a man like you and I. And what happened after that is Jesus lived his entire life in total dependence on his relationship with God. Now watch it. Go read it for yourself. How often do you see Jesus up late at night, early in the morning, spending time with God? How many big decisions do you see Jesus making, and he's spending time with God before them? How often do you see, there's an entire chapter in the book of John where Jesus is simply talking to God. Everything that Jesus did flowed out of this relationship. So you take the Bible, you get some scissors, you start cutting it up. 1/3 of it's going to fall into here roughly. The second relationship that we see Jesus continually engaging in is his relationship with the disciples. Now, the word disciple simply means followers. So we could also say his followers. And he had 12, and then he had 72. He had groups of people that were following him. And he had a continual relationship with them. Now what's unique about this relationship is that every interaction that Jesus had with his followers was the overflow of this relationship. Jesus would spend time with God, and it would overflow in how he loves and serves and engages and empowers those around him. Does this make sense to you? Okay, so again, take some scissors, start cutting them up. And the last thing we see is Jesus engaging in the relationship that he has with the world. And by that, I mean simply those who were not followers of Jesus, those who didn't believe in God, those who were far from God at the time. And what's amazing about this is Jesus was continually engaged in all 3 of these relationships. You take a pair of scissors and just start cutting up those stories, and they're going to fit into one of these 3 relationships. His relationship with God, that was overflowing in his relationship with his followers, that was overflowing into the world around him. Now hear me. The reason we can confidently answer that Jesus would love first is because he was continually engaging the world around him when all the religious people said he wasn't supposed to do that. He loved people that didn't look like him, act like him, talk like him, and he didn't even show up saying that they should change. He met them where they were. And he invited them to follow him. In the process of following Jesus, he would change them. And so I don't know where you walked in this conversation, what your understanding of the life of a Jesus follower looks like, what your ambitions are moving forward into this new year. But rather than the information that we know and the actions that we can take, what I want to invite us into is the relationships that we can pour our lives into. And the byproduct really is the relationships we receive from as well. Now, let me give you a statement. This is really important. If you're taking notes, I want you to write this down. This is monumental to this conversation that we're having today. As a result of this conversation, as we see Jesus living his life in the context of these three relationships, the Christian life, here it is, the Christian life is not me living my life for Jesus. The Christian life is not me living my life for Jesus. The Christian life is Jesus living his life in and through me. I'm going to say it one more time so we get it, okay? The Christian life, to be a follower of Jesus, is not me living my life for Jesus, but rather letting Jesus live his life in and through me. And so here's the big idea today. The life of a Jesus follower is all about relationships. I don't know what definitions you had, what's been added and subtracted, but you need to understand that the life of a Jesus follower, at the bare minimum, is all about relationships. So we started this conversation with direction, right? Good intentions won't get us where we want to go. We've got to pick a direction and start heading that way. And so this is the target. And so for the next 12 weeks, we're intentionally hitting a focus in a direction of saying, hey, we're going to take these conversations and dive into them and break them apart and grow in these three relationships, because this is everything that Jesus spent his time on. And the goal of this conversation, friends, is to realign our hearts to the simplicity here. Now, this is simple, right? So like, there's no rules here. Not a list of do's and don'ts. Not a list of right and wrong. There's three relationships that he was involved in. And it's very, very simple. And so what I want to invite us into is let's get rid of all the baggage and all the lists and all of the negative emotion and experiences. And let's just see, hey, what is Jesus actually inviting us into? Now, I'm going to give us three summary statements today to help us kind of break these down so we know where we're going the next couple of weeks. The first one is this. Following Jesus, number one, is about a relationship with God. Following Jesus is about a relationship with God. Now, once you go through our growth track, or if you've been around for any amount of time, we use the language of getting alone. We have this 5% life conversation that we talk about of starting somewhere in the right direction. And so we constantly are asking, hey, are you getting alone? If you go into city group, one of the things we're talking about is, how's your alone time with God? Are you prioritizing that time? How's it going? And so there's this primary relationship that we see for Jesus of his relationship with God. Now, this is crazy important, okay? If we miss this, we miss everything. If you and I miss this, we miss it all. And I'll show you why in a minute. But my question for you to wrestle with as you walked in today is, do you, friend, have a personal relationship with God? I'm not asking if you grew up in church. I'm not asking if your grandma believes in Jesus. I'm not asking if you own a Bible. I'm not asking if you're a good person. I'm not asking how much money you gave to charity last year. I'm not asking if you gave that homeless guy in the corner a handout. I'm not asking if you don't cuss at your kids, okay? I'm asking, do you have a personal relationship with God? And maybe you're like, I don't even know what that means. So let's talk about it, okay? John 17:3, out of the mouth of Jesus. Check this out. This is the way to have eternal life. Go to church. Read your Bible. Be a good person. Give a bunch of money. Cut back some of those words that you know are not as good as they should be, and except for they feel really good when you're mad, but never mind that. All right, so this is the way to have eternal life. What is it? No, it's not a list. What is it? To know you. He's talking to God, the only true God, and Jesus, the one that you sent to earth. Jesus tells us what eternal life is, friends. And you notice it's not a destination. All right, what is eternal life? To go to heaven when you die? Be a good person and hopefully end up somewhere better than elsewhere? No, it's not a destination only, but a relationship. Now, all right, I have a man crush on Hugh Jackman. That is a sexy man right there, okay? Just get it out there on the open, that's all. I'm just kidding. I'm going somewhere. All right, so Hugh Jackman, I don't know him personally, right? I know about him. I enjoy watching him on The Greatest Showman, and I enjoy watching him in X-Men. And I enjoy watching him like be both ends of all, right? I know about Hugh Jackman, but I don't know him personally. You guys understand the difference, right? So when Jesus uses this word know, I think our brains sometimes go like, hey, know about God. Like, hey, I know about God. I know about Jesus. Like, I've been around that. But he's not using that kind of a know. This is a personal, intimate, relational know. That we can know God relationally. And so my question for you is what have you been exposed to at this point, and where's your understanding when it comes to what does it take to have a relationship with God? What Jesus is showing us here, friends, is that Christianity is not a religion. It's a relationship. You see, listen, every other world religion on the planet, if you boil it down at the grassroots level, they are all focused to a degree on a list of doing X, Y, and Z to achieve whatever destination we're trying to get after. And it's about your performance and what you bring to the table. But Jesus flips the script on us, and he does the exact opposite. He says, hey, listen, you're never going to be good enough. And you can't get to me. So I'm going to do for you what you can't do for yourself, and I'm going to come to you. Christianity is the only religion on the planet where we're not trying to get to God, but God came to us. And Jesus comes, and he lives a perfect life. And he dies on the cross in our place for our sin, and he's buried, and he rises again. And all of that is to pay for our sin and give us access to a right relationship with God. Not for anything that we do, not because we deserve it, not because we can earn it, not because we can maintain it, but because of the love of God. And it's sacrificial. And this love is what motivates us to be drawn to God. So I don't know where you walked in. I don't know what you've been told about God, but he loves you. And he proved his love for you by sending Jesus to die. Friends, I became a Jesus follower at 15. Not because any of my life looked like it was supposed to look. Not because I met any standard. Man, I was, nope. We can talk about it. I'll tell you everything, okay? There was nothing about me that was earning me any extra credit with God, okay? But then I ran into this incredible guy named Jesus. And I didn't do anything to earn it, but I was invited into a relationship with God because of what he had earned in my place. That's the same invitation for you and I. So, what does it mean to have a relationship with God? It means we trust that Jesus is who he said he was, and that he did for us what he said he could do. That he was God, and that when he died and rose again, that was enough to make us right with God. Does it make sense to you? Okay? So, my question, again, is do you have a personal relationship with God? Let me give you just a little more because I think we get stuck here, okay? Danielle and I have been married for 9 years, just a few months ago. And it's awesome, by the way. It's so awesome. And let me ask you, like, what is my marriage? You might not know me, but you could probably guess at a few things. Is my marriage buying a house? Is my marriage, raising kids? Is it the chores that we have? Is the laundry we have to do? The dishes that we wash? Is my marriage the vacations that we take? Is it the walks in the park that we have? Is it our joint banking account? Is it date night? Like, what is our marriage? It's none of those things, right? Our marriage is a relationship. You agree with me? Right? Our marriage is a relationship. All of those activities, what are they? They're an extension of the relationship that we share together. Now, listen. All of those things outside of relationship are super weird, right? Go down to Wonderland Lake. Walk up to a total stranger and say, hey, you want to hold hands and walk together? See how that goes. That's weird. Go to Pearl Street. Find a random person and say, hey, you want to open up a joint banking account? No, don't do that. That's weird. Why is that weird? Because there's no relationship. These things only make sense in the context of relationship. You see, relationship fuels action. So when it comes to our relationship with God, you guys got to get this with me, okay? This is huge. We think relationship with God is read the Bible and go to church and love my neighbor and forgive people when they make me mad and give some money and go on a mission trip and be nice to people. And we have this list of things that we are told and make up when it comes to a relationship with God. That's no. Those are extensions of my relationship with God. I don't read the Bible because I'm afraid what will happen if I don't. I read the Bible because I'm invited into a relationship with God. I don't go to church because I'm afraid that, my attendance card is going to be low and he's not going to let me in one day, but because my relationship with God is expressed in my relationship with you. You see this? relationship with God. So let me show you John 15. John 15, out of the mouth of Jesus, just continuing this conversation. Jesus said, yeah, I'm the vine, you're the branches. Those who remain in me and I in them produce much fruit. That word remain, it's a relational term. It's holding on to, it's staying with, it's abiding. Okay? He says, those who are close to me in relationship and I and them, they produce much fruit. We could use that. He always likes to use like metaphors and analogies to help us understand tree and fruit, so the good works and the good life we're talking about. He says, apart from me, you can do nothing. Very, very simple. Listen, what's the job of a branch? Or just hang out there, right? Like, think about it. Does the branch produce the fruit? You ever walk by an apple tree or a lemon tree, and you see branches out there like, ah! Like trying, like just squeezing out an orange, like, ah! Right, and then, right, no, right, what does the branch do? Just hangs on. You know what your job is as a Jesus follower? You know what you're invited into? Not to produce the fruit of a good life. Your job is to hang on in relationship. And Jesus says, I'm going to do this thing in and through you. So we ask the question, what does it look like to follow Jesus? If the life of Jesus was investing in these three relationships, and the life of a Jesus follower is him living his life in and through me, you know what it looks like? The same exact thing. Does this make sense? All right, let's keep going. Number two. So number one, following Jesus is about our relationship with God. Number two, following Jesus is about our relationship with one another. Again, we express these in different ways, so we kind of measure, hey, are we getting close? Are we getting alone with God? Are we getting together and close? So together, this is what you're doing, right? Congratulations, you did it and you didn't even know it, like, woo, you're winning. Okay, so this is getting together, and our city groups are when we get close, because right now, you can't be best buds and share a meal and share life together because you're shoulder to shoulder, and so we get in circles, and we share a meal, and we laugh, and we live life together in city groups, okay? So we get together when we get close. This is what it means to be one another. So this relationship, Jesus talks about it in John 15. Same conversation out of the mouth of Jesus, I'll show you. He says, this is my command for you. Love each other in the same way I have loved you. You see the connection here? The overflow of a relationship with God, we receive from God love that we don't deserve, and our ability to love each other is in supernatural, because I can extend to you a love that I didn't that I didn't earn, and therefore you don't have to earn. And I also have an example of love that's bigger than my own selfishness. Our relationship with God, by the way, that's why we're fasting starting next week. So you're invited into that. Circle the letter P on your connection card. That's why we're doing a night of worship, to prioritize our relationship with God and to give you some tools to grow in that. The second thing here is about community and life together. And so getting together on the weekends and in groups. So our semester for groups starts next Sunday. That's on purpose so that you can get involved in community. Now, some people, this is my God box, right? Yeah, okay. So some people think like, all right, me and God, right? And they just kind of like take their God box and they go wherever, right? And they're like, me and God are good. And like we live in Boulder, so it's like me, God, and the mountains, right? Like that's my church. The mountains is my church, baby, right? It's this spiritual mountaintop. No high like the Most High. Anyway, all right. So we take our God box and we have this relationship with God. And I know what people mean by this, okay? Like right? They're like, hey, me and my relationship with God, it's personal. You know what the problem with it only being personal is? Is that Jesus told us to do stuff that's not personal, right? It's really hard for me to do like 75% of the stuff that Jesus told me to do by myself. There's a lot of like love one another commands that are really hard to accomplish on my own. And so the reason we do groups is because, friends, there's things that I can learn from you about God that I can't learn on my own. And there's things that God wants to teach me through community with you that I can't learn on my own. It doesn't mean it's always easy, right? Relationships are sometimes hard. But I learn more about my relationship with God because my relationship with God is expressed when I have the opportunity to love you. You probably know this is true, but the first obvious evidence that our relationship with God is right is that my relationship with you is right. Right? And we know this, right? We see people who are like totally hateful to other people and they say they love God. Right? One of Jesus' followers says, hey, actually, you're a liar, in case you're wondering. Jesus' brother said it too. Hey, how can you say that you love God who you can't see and you can't even love the neighbor in front of you? So Jesus gives us a practical opportunity to express our faith with one another and grow together. Okay? That's the second relationship. And the last thing, last principle, is following Jesus is about our relationship with the world. And this is how we express it. Again, we have these 5% life, and we say, are you getting out? So not like get out, like leave right now, okay? Not like that. But like, are you getting out in the world around you? Are you outside of your circle? So time with God is important, and time with other Christians is crazy important. But Jesus put you on this planet to love the world around you. And once you come in a relationship with him, he wants you to extend that same invitation for other people to be in God's family in the same way that you received it. Now, some of us, we get freaked out about this. We're like, oh man, that's like only for super spiritual, like special, super elite Christians. And friends, can I just tell you, listen, this was the rhythm of Jesus' life, yes? We talked about that, right? He was engaged here. And if being a follower of Jesus means that he is living his life in and through me, if this is who he was, then it's what he's going to do through me. I don't have to be special or trained or go to a school or a class. If you're a follower of Jesus, friends, he wants to work in and through you to help people who don't know him, don't have a relationship with him, come into relationship. Let me show you. John 17:18, Jesus prayed this for us. Just as you sent me, as he's talking to God, I'm sending them into the world. No qualifications, no prerequisites, no get your crap together before you. No, none of that. No, I read my Bible this much this week, or right, I'm just sending them. Because the life of a Jesus follower is not me living for him, but Jesus living his life in and through me. So the last thing, I already told you, right? We have our worship night. We have prayer and fasting happening. We have city groups launching. You know what we're doing? We didn't talk about it today, but I'm going to let you know because this is awesome. And then I'm going to invite the band to come so they can get ready and lead us in some music. On the 31st, that's our night of worship and prayer, and that's going to be boss, by the way. You got to be here. It's going to be amazing. But then that Sunday, anybody know what Sunday that is? February 2nd? Super Bowl Sunday. All right. Anyway, so Super Bowl Sunday, you know what we're doing? Canceling service that day. Yeah, baby. Woo! Mic drop. Let's all go home. All right. You know why? First of all, the game's at 2:30, so that's inconvenient. And second of all, because we're the church and we exist for the world. We didn't set up shop so that the world come to us. We are the church and we exist for the world. And so rather than trying to go and get people in these doors, we're going to be the church and engage in the world around us. So all 4 of our city groups, they're going to throw Super Bowl parties that day. We're canceling service on purpose so that we can go be the church around us. Now hear me. All of our city groups are throwing parties, and if that's an opportunity for you to invite someone who wouldn't normally come to church or anything else, but they'll come and like share a beer with you and eat some wings and watch the game and have a good time, awesome. But if your neighbors invite you to their party, you better go, and you better invite me. Okay, I'm just kidding. But you see the difference? Like, it's not about being in our community only. It's about being the church in the world around us. And so we are freeing up that day so you can be the church. Come on, somebody. Give it a hand. That's awesome. Yeah, I'm so pumped. All right, here's how we're ending it, band. Come on, get up here. John 13:34. Let me show you. All 3 of these relationships are interdependent. Jesus said, so now I am giving you a new command, a simple command. Love each other. Just as I have loved you, you should love each other. And watch this. And your love for one another will prove to the world that you're my followers. They're interdependent. The overflow of my relationship with God spills into my relationship with you and the world around us. And so here's my challenge for you and I this week. I already asked you once, I'll ask you again. How's your relationship with God? Maybe you're a Jesus follower and you just have like some stuff that's creeped in. Like you got all these extra things and this list of stuff, and maybe you just kind of have drifted off of what Jesus simply invites you into, and that's to engage in relationship. Maybe you grew up religious, and to be honest, maybe for the first time, you're realizing that you've been exposed to religion, but you've never had a relationship with God like I'm talking about. And can I be transparent with you? I think it's very possible that some of you in the room, you've had a cognitive religious experience that's never actually opened up a relationship with God through faith in Jesus, and maybe today is the first time. That's something like that'll change for you. Maybe you're here and you're kind of new to this thing and you're looking at it all from the outside, and maybe for the first time in your life, like it did for me at 15, God is doing something in your heart tonight that he's never done before. Maybe this information a month ago, 3 months ago, a year ago would have been different, but tonight God is doing something unique. And for the first time, all of this is clicking, and you're like, man, I want a relationship with God. Whatever that is, I don't have it. And I want you to know, in the simplicity of this moment, friends, no matter where you walked in, you can leave here with confidence that you have a relationship with God. And Jesus makes it simple. He says it's like this, that I believe that he was who he said he was, and that he can do for me what he said he would do. And in the privacy of this moment, you don't have to worry about anybody else. You can look me right in the eyeballs, pray in your own heart and mind with me, and start your relationship with God right now. And it goes like this. So if you want that, if you want a relationship with God, then I'm just going to invite you, pray with me in your own heart and mind. Jesus, I believe in you. That you were who you said you were. And you did for me what I couldn't do for myself. I can't get to you on my own. And so I'm asking you to save me. And bring me into relationship with God. I want to follow you. If your heart and your mind are coming together, and as I share those words with you, you're just, man, like, I need that. That's what I want. There's a place on your connection card for you to be able to let me know, let our staff know, let our team know, so we can follow up with you and be able to encourage you and celebrate with you and give you the tools to move forward in your relationship with God. But friends, I want you to have confidence. If you prayed with me, or maybe while we're singing songs, maybe you're like, I don't know, and maybe in the moment you can just pray on your own, give your life to Jesus. I want you to know you can leave this place with confidence that you have a relationship with God. Others of you, man, I don't know where you walked in or what your next steps might be. We have resources out there in the lobby for you for your God time to grow in that relationship. We have this devotional and this prayer and fasting thing that's kicking off next week to help you grow. City groups are a great catalyst for that as well. We read the Bible together through the week. There's lots of tools that we have to give access to you. So maybe your next step is joining a city group. Or maybe your next step is going through Growth Track next week to find out more and to get plugged into this community. Whatever your next step is, man, I just want to encourage you, use that connection card. Maybe you have prayer requests. There's a spot on the back there as well for you to use that. Let us know. And lastly, I want you to just start thinking, okay? You got a month to think about your friends and neighbors, coworkers, family, who you can invite to a Super Bowl party or join them. And I want you to have that on your radar ahead of time, that you get to go love and live like Jesus in the world around you. Will you stand with me? As you stand, we're going to sing in just a moment, and I'm going to pray over you. And as you stand, and they're going to lead us in some songs, and I want to encourage you, as we sing, one of the things I love about singing together is it's like we get to pray through song. So sometimes if you're like me, you don't know what to pray. So these songs, they help me kind of guide my heart in prayer. And so maybe you're standing there, no one else is looking around, but maybe you just like flip your hands out like this, like kind of under the cover, like, no one's looking. But this is maybe a representation of surrender. Like, all right, God, I don't know what you're doing here, but I'm going to give you this. Or maybe you're a little bold and you want to carry the TV. You know what I mean? Like, okay, you might have a question. I don't care what you do. Okay, do what's comfortable for you in these moments as we sing. But man, don't miss what God might be doing in this moment, okay? Make sure you respond to it. Use that connection card. Maybe you're here and you follow Jesus and you've never been baptized and celebrated publicly. There's a spot on that connection card so we can help you do that as well, okay? Let me pray over you. God, I'm so grateful for the time that we've had. I'm grateful that you invite us into a relationship and that it's simple. That we don't earn it, we don't maintain it, we don't deserve it, but we do receive it. And we receive it with a gladness and celebration that you do for us what we can't do for ourselves. And Jesus, some of us, man, we've been tainted by negative experience and additions to what you invite us into, and our friends and family have the same emotional baggage. Man, would you help us to put those things aside and take you at your word? And then would you help us to take you and what you're doing in and through us and share it with the world? It's in Jesus' name, amen.